The desert morning was already warm when Emily Carter pulled into the dusty parking lot at Red Rock Canyon National Conservation Area. The engine of the silver Subaru purred to silence. From the passenger seat, her husband Adam turned to look at her with that familiar mix of concern and affection. "You sure about this?" he asked. Emily smiled a little breathless. Her hand instinctively rested on her swollen belly, now carrying 36 weeks of life inside it. She was glowing not just from the pregnancy, but from something deeper, something that looked a lot like hope. "It's just a short hike," she said. "We'll take it slow." Adam leaned over, kissed her temple, and helped her out of the car. His hand found hers as they stepped onto the trail, the loose red gravel crunching beneath their boots. The sun was climbing fast, casting long, jagged shadows across the sandstone cliffs that surrounded them like ancient sentinels. Emily paused, adjusted the straps of her water backpack, and looked around. "I can't believe how quiet it is out here." "That's why I picked this trail," Adam replied. "Not many people come out this far. It's perfect. Perfect." That was the word she'd used to describe this pregnancy. After 6 years of trying 3 rounds of IVF and a miscarriage that nearly broke her, Emily was finally weeks away from holding her baby. Her daughter. Everything had finally aligned. She turned back toward the car and raised her phone. "One photo before we go." Adam stepped beside her, wrapping his arm around her waist. Emily framed the towering cliffs in the background, her smile broad radiant. Click. That would be the last image ever taken of them. Across town, Jessica Miller stirred her coffee in the quiet of her kitchen. It was a Sunday, her only day off, and she was supposed to be meeting Emily for brunch after their easy hike. But something had been gnawing at her all morning. Emily was stubborn, determined, sweet, yes, but reckless when she believed in something, especially when it came to this pregnancy. She wouldn't cancel today, Jessica thought. Not unless something had gone wrong. By 12:30 p.m., Jessica had texted her 3 times. No reply. By 2:00 p.m., the worry had bloomed into anxiety. By 3:15 p.m., she was speeding toward Red Rock Canyon in her Toyota, the GPS locked on the Calico Basin trailhead Emily had mentioned earlier that week. When she arrived, the Subaru was still there, baking in the afternoon heat. Locked. Untouched. Jessica's breath caught. Her fingers trembled as she called 911. The initial search effort was swift and focused. Rangers combed the area. Aerial units scanned the canyons. Search dogs picked up a scent and lost it again a few hundred yards in. There was no sign of a struggle, no dropped belongings. It was as if the couple had evaporated into the rocks. Detective Samuel Reyes from the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department was assigned the case 3 days in. In his 15 years on the force, he'd seen dozens of disappearances, some clean, some violent. But this one didn't fit anything. There was no motive, no history of domestic issues. Adam Carter had a spotless record. Emily's medical file was routine. No financial troubles, no enemies. Just gone. When asked, Jessica was unyielding. Emily would never run, she said, her voice raw. And Adam worshipped her, he would never hurt her. But as days turned to weeks and weeks bled into months, the narrative shifted. No ransom demand, no sightings, no bodies. The case cooled. News coverage died down. The posters curled at the edges on lampposts. "Have you seen this couple became background noise?" Except to Jessica. She never stopped searching. 4 years later, Jessica's boots crunched over the gravel of the same desert that had taken her sister. The sun hadn't even peaked yet, but the heat was already climbing into the triple digits. 7 people joined her today, mostly regulars from her volunteer group. There used to be more in the early days. 15, 20. Now it was down to a handful. People moved on. People gave up. But Jessica wouldn't. They spread out methodically, GPS devices in hand, marking every corner of the mapped grid they had assigned for the weekend. Jessica had a system. She kept notebooks, dozens of them, documenting every stone, turned every skeleton of a coyote, found every false lead. The police had called it obsessive. Jessica called it due diligence. Around 10:45 a.m., Marcus, a seasoned volunteer with sunburned cheeks and permanent tan lines from his baseball cap, called out Jess, "Maybe we wrap early. The heat's brutal today." Jessica hesitated, scanning the red horizon. "Yeah," she finally said, "mark the perimeter. Let's pack up." As the group made their way back toward the parking lot, Jessica reached into her pocket for her phone. The signal bars reappeared like a miracle. Missed calls, voicemails, all from the same name, Detective Reyes. Her heart skipped. She called back immediately. Jessica came his voice on the second ring, breathless. "Thank God, I've been trying to reach you for over 2 hours. Where are you?" "At Red Rock. We're heading back to the trailhead now. What's wrong?" "There's been a development in your sister's case." Jessica stopped walking. Her entire body went cold despite the heat. "What kind of development?" "A jogger and his dog found something early this morning. North Loop, White Rock Hills. I'd rather explain in person. Can you get here?" "Yes." "Text me the coordinates. I'm leaving now." Her hands trembled as she read the location. It was a 45-minute drive around the outer ridge of the park. She climbed into her car, barely able to control the steering wheel. Sarah, another volunteer, offered to come with her. So did Marcus and a few others. They followed her in silence. When they reached the site, police vehicles dotted the barren terrain. Yellow crime scene tape fluttered in the wind. A white canopy had been erected. Beneath it, folding tables bore plastic evidence bags and something else, something that made Jessica's stomach turn. Detective Reyes met her at the edge of the perimeter, his face grave. "I want to prepare you. What we found, it's not good." He led her toward a man standing beside a German shepherd. The man looked sun-worn mid-40s, wearing running gear soaked in sweat. "This is Malcolm Brandt," Reyes said. "He and his dog found the remains." "I'm so sorry for your loss," Malcolm said quietly. "I didn't mean to. Bella came back with something in her mouth." Jessica followed his gaze to the evidence table. Bones. Human. Pale from exposure. Long. Weathered. Her breath caught when she saw it, a tibia bone, fixed with surgical hardware pins and plates. "She had knee surgery," Jessica whispered. 3 years before. Reyes nodded. "We've already matched the serial numbers. It's Emily." Jessica collapsed to her knees. Sarah rushed forward, wrapping her arms around her, but nothing could shield her from what came next. "There's more," Reyes said gently. "Smaller bones, in a crevice near the cliff wall. Our forensics believe they belong to a late-term fetus." Jessica could no longer breathe. The desert spun around her. The baby had been with her. They were both gone. Back in her car, parked at the site, Jessica stared blankly out the windshield. Her hands were still shaking. Detective Reyes had told her the investigation would be reopened. DNA tests were underway, but the evidence was clear. The storm last night had likely dislodged remains hidden under a rockfall. But there was one part that wouldn't let her rest. There were no signs of Adam, no clothing, no bones, nothing, which left two terrifying possibilities. Adam had died elsewhere. Or Adam was still alive, and if he was alive, Jessica didn't know if she wanted to find him. Not yet. The desert wind moved like a whisper, tugging at the yellow police tape that flapped in the sun. Jessica stood where the canyon wall split, where the world seemed to peel open like a scar. Beneath the temporary white canopy, the evidence bags were neatly arrayed, clinical, impersonal. But nothing about what lay on that table felt distant. Detective Reyes had been right. It was Emily. The tibia bone, still bearing its surgical hardware, had been identified quickly. The plate and pins were unique, installed during a skiing accident 3 years before her disappearance. Medical records matched the serial number precisely. Jessica hadn't needed the confirmation. She had known the moment she saw it. But the second discovery, bones no bigger than her fingers found deeper in a rock crevice, had shattered something inside her that she hadn't realized was still whole. Emily had died with her baby. Jessica stood frozen, her hands clenched, knuckles white as ash. The voices around her were muffled. Crime scene techs in gloves and booties moved with precision. Malcolm Brandt, the jogger who had found the remains, stood off to the side with his German shepherd Bella, gently stroking the dog's ears. His face was pale, haunted. Detective Reyes returned from speaking with forensics. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes gave him away, tired, sorrowful, and alert. "Jessica, I need to speak with you. Alone." They moved away from the group toward his unmarked cruiser parked beneath a crooked Joshua tree. "We'll be transporting the remains to the Clark County coroner," he said. "DNA confirmation will take 48 to 72 hours, but based on the hardware, it's her." Jessica nodded numb. "But we didn't find any remains consistent with a male adult. No clothing, no shoes, no other personal effects, not even Adam's phone or wedding ring." "That doesn't make sense," she said slowly. "They were together. They posted the picture from the trail." "I know, but the lack of any evidence of him, it raises questions." Jessica turned to him sharply. "You think he did this. I think Reyes said evenly that we have to consider every possibility, including the fact that your sister's remains were concealed in a way that kept them hidden for 4 years. That's not a random accident. That's deliberate. He loved her," she whispered. "They tried for 6 years to have that baby. He would never—" "I hope you're right," Reyes said gently, "but cases like this, they twist people. You think you know someone, and then—" He didn't finish the sentence. Jessica shook her head. "No, if Adam was alive, he'd have come back. He would have told someone. He wasn't some psychopath. And yet Reyes said he's gone. No trace, no remains, which leaves only 2 options. He died elsewhere, or he's still out there." Jessica stared at the dust swirling around their feet. Still out there. It wasn't just a theory. It was a possibility that had been buried under 4 years of grief. One she wasn't ready to face until now. Later that evening, Jessica stood in her sister's house. The front door creaked open on its tired hinges. The air inside was stale thick with the scent of dry carpet and long-settled dust. She hadn't been here in almost 2 years. After paying taxes and utilities for the first year, Jessica had been forced to let most things lapse. She kept the basics running just enough to keep the city from condemning the property. The furniture was still where it had always been. A blanket still lay folded over the arm of the couch. A mug, Emily's favorite, the one with the hand-painted daisies, sat on the coffee table with a small dusty ring around it where liquid had long ago evaporated. The past lingered here like a ghost. Jessica climbed the stairs, flashlight in hand, the house's silence pressing against her ribs. In the bedroom, the bed was still made, the pillows indented, as if someone had just risen moments before. The air smelled faintly of dried lavender. She knelt beside the bookshelf and reached behind a row of old photo albums. Nothing. Not there. Her eyes swept the room. Then she remembered. The mirror. Emily had once shown her the hidden cabinet behind it, giggling like a child with a secret. "This is where I'll hide my best recipes," she'd said, "or my emergency chocolate." Jessica reached up, pressed the hidden latch behind the mirror's right edge. The frame clicked and swung forward slightly. Behind it was a narrow compartment, and there, wrapped in a floral scarf, was Emily's leather-bound recipe book. Jessica let out a long breath and carefully took it down, cradling it like an heirloom. She sat on the dusty bed and flipped through the pages: croissants, lemon bars, honey lavender cake. Every line written in Emily's looping, graceful handwriting. But tucked between 2 pages, something else caught her eye. A photo. Emily and Adam at some medical conference in Reno. Adam wore a brown fedora cocked slightly to the side, his smirk full of mischief. Jessica smiled despite herself. He'd always said it made him feel like Indiana Jones. Then her smile faded, because earlier at the trail site, a man in a brown fedora had been standing behind the police line. She'd dismissed it then, too emotionally overwhelmed to think clearly. But now, no, it couldn't be. Still, the thought clawed at her. She slipped the photo into her backpack and turned to leave. But when she reached the window, she stopped. A black sedan sat idling at the curb. 3 men stepped out. The one in front wore a brown fedora. Jessica's breath caught. They weren't knocking. They were trying to unlock the door. She stumbled backward from the window, heart-pounding, eyes darting for an escape. Her phone, she'd left it charging in the car. No landline either. She hadn't paid the bill in over 2 years. Panic gripped her. She tiptoed to the staircase, moving as quietly as possible. But halfway down, her hip clipped a vase on the hallway table. It crashed to the floor, shattering. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Outside, the men froze. Jessica saw them retreat. They didn't run. They walked briskly back to the car, got in, and drove away without a word. Her pulse thundered in her ears. When the sound of the car had faded, she swept up the broken vase with shaking hands. Every instinct told her to leave. Now. She locked up behind her, hugging the recipe book and photo to her chest, and ran to her car. As she drove home, her mind spun. Why had those men tried to break into Emily's house? Why hadn't the one in the hat used a key if it was Adam? And what could they possibly be looking for? Jessica barely slept. The next day, she baked the cake Emily's signature honey lavender sponge, planning to thank the man who had found her sister. It was something, a way to show gratitude, a way to breathe again. She packed the cake in a box and headed for the grocery store, needing eggs and vanilla. The parking lot was quiet, the golden hour sun dipping low across the desert skyline. She was pulling into a space near the front entrance when she saw them. The same black sedan. 3 men stepped out. One wore the brown fedora. Her entire body froze. She ducked beneath the dashboard, heart hammering in her chest. Through the windshield, she watched them walk toward the gas station beside the grocery store. They were arguing. She couldn't hear everything, but fragments reached her. Ledger. Has to be. Check again. Careful. Then a fourth figure emerged, a young man in Scrub's cartoon animals dancing across the fabric. He was carrying a cooler. Jessica's stomach turned. The men spoke briefly, then climbed into the sedan and pulled away. She hesitated. Every instinct told her to stay put. But if that really was Adam, she needed answers. Jessica started the engine and followed. The black sedan was already pulling into traffic when Jessica pressed her foot to the gas. Her tires screeched lightly on the asphalt as she merged behind them, trying to keep a distance without drawing attention. The sun had dipped just below the horizon, turning the Nevada sky a dusty lavender. The taillights of the sedan glowed red, unwavering, controlled. They weren't speeding. They weren't fleeing. They were simply moving, methodical, calculated. Jessica's pulse pounded against her neck as she tightened her grip on the steering wheel. Her knuckles were bone-white. She had no plan, no backup, only a gut feeling and the terrifying possibility that her sister's husband, dead missing, or something in between, might be alive and involved in something unspeakable. She kept 2 cars behind enough to not be noticed, she hoped, as they passed through suburban stretches of Las Vegas and into the more remote stretches of Highway 160. Traffic thinned. Strip malls gave way to rocky hills and abandoned lots. The desert swallowed the road. Jessica fumbled for her phone and dialed Detective Reyes's direct line. He picked up on the second ring. "You're following them." His voice cracked like a whip, sharp, tense, disbelieving. "Yes." "It's the same men from the house," she whispered. "I saw them at the grocery store. One of them had the same fedora Adam used to wear." "I couldn't. I had to know." "Where are you now? Highway 160. "Heading west. They passed the last gas station about 5 minutes ago." Jessica Reyes said tightly, "You need to turn around. Now. You're alone. You don't know who these people are." "If they see you, they might already know I'm watching," she admitted. There was a pause. "Jessica, I'm sending units your way, but you have to turn around. It's not worth the risk." She exhaled hard, adrenaline surging. "Okay, you're right. I'll turn around." She started scanning the darkening road for a safe place to U-turn. But there were no exits now. No shoulder, just desert and scrub brush and the looming silence of the oncoming night. Finally, she spotted an old construction turnout. She turned off the highway headlights, sweeping across cracked pavement and a pile of concrete barriers. She twisted the wheel, made a slow, careful U-turn, and began heading back toward the city. That was when she saw the headlights behind her. The black sedan. It had turned around. They knew. "Oh, God," she whispered, gripping the steering wheel so hard her wrists hurt. The sedan closed in fast high beams, cutting through her rearview mirror. They were too close, practically touching her bumper. Then the driver surged forward, pulling up beside her. In the passenger seat, she saw the man in the fedora gesture sharply pull over. Jessica's heart jackhammered in her chest. "Nope," she muttered, slamming her foot on the gas. Her little Honda Civic shuddered but accelerated. The sedan stayed with her, easily matching speed. Then it veered into her lane, swerving hard, trying to force her off the road. "No!" She screamed, wrenching the wheel. Her car hit the loose gravel shoulder and skidded wildly. She lost control. The world spun. She slammed the brakes too late. The car pitched forward, wheels caught in sand, and came to a stop in a plume of dust. She fumbled for reverse. Too late. The sedan had stopped directly behind her, blocking any escape. She locked her doors. Then reached for her phone. Gone. It must have slid to the floor during the turn. She bent down, searching her fingers, scrambling blindly. Glass exploded beside her. Her driver's side window shattered inward, spraying her face and lap with safety glass. A man's hand reached through, unlocked the door, and yanked it open. "No!" she shouted, kicking, scratching, trying to crawl over the center console. Two more hands grabbed her. Someone zip-tied her wrists with brutal efficiency. Something soft and damp was pressed into her mouth, a gag. A chemical smell hung in the air, disinfectant and rubber. She was dragged out of the car, kicking and twisting until she was thrown into the back seat of the sedan, pinned between two heavy bodies. "She's the one from the house," the man beside her said. "Saw her watching us. I knew it," said the driver. "That cheap window tint can't hide a damn thing." Jessica struggled harder, bucking against them. Her scream was muffled. The man beside her pressed a hand to her shoulder. "Save your strength, sweetheart," he said with mock gentleness. "You're gonna need it." They drove for over an hour, blindfolded. The world became disjointed vibrations of the road beneath her muffled voices, the smell of cigarettes and sweat. Her arms ached from the tightness of the zip ties. Her lips were numb. She thought she might throw up. Eventually the vehicle slowed. Gravel crunched under the tires. The air changed cooler, heavier. They stopped. She was yanked out, her legs stumbling under her. Hands guided her forward. A door opened. The air smelled of mildew and bleach. They pulled the blindfold off. Jessica blinked. She was inside what looked like an abandoned warehouse. Except it wasn't abandoned. The walls were lined with fluorescent lights and wires. There were doors leading into hallways, equipment carts, medical monitors, rolling stretchers, hospital beds, and people. Men in scrubs moved around calmly, methodically, like this was normal, like this was just another Tuesday night. Jessica was frozen. This way, the man in the fedora said, his voice suddenly colder. "We've got a special room for you." They shoved her down a hallway past a door that stood slightly open. Inside, she glimpsed a woman unconscious on a table, her arm strapped down, an IV hanging beside her. Another man in scrubs leaned over her, writing something. Jessica felt her knees buckle. She was thrown into a room with a steel bed straps hanging from its sides. Max, the larger man, tightened the straps around her wrists and ankles. The gag was removed. She gasped, coughing, tears streaming down her face. "Please," she rasped. Why are you doing this?" "Rico." The fedora man swore, "Welcome to the program." They left her there for what felt like an hour. Then the door opened. Jessica's heart surged terror and hope, warring in her chest. Two men entered. One wore a surgical mask and gloves. The other? Her breath caught in her throat. It was Adam. He looked thinner, pale. A bruise ringed one eye, and his surgical scrubs hung loosely on his frame, but it was him. He froze the moment he saw her. "Danny," his voice cracked. "Oh my God, Jessica." Jessica was crying. Adam, what is this? What the hell is going on?" But Rico stepped between them. "Save it," he snapped. "This isn't a family reunion." He turned to Adam. "You know the rules, Doc. You do the work, she stays alive. You refuse again, and she's next on the table." Adam's face twisted. Fury, grief, helplessness. "You bastard," he growled. "Tick-tock," Rico said, tapping an imaginary watch. Adam looked at Jessica, his eyes full of pain. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'll get you out. I promise." Then he turned and walked away. Jessica's scream echoed down the hall after him. Adam. The door slammed shut. Darkness, silence. Only the sound of her own ragged breathing. She was alone. But now she knew two things. Adam was alive, and he was trapped in something far, far worse than she had imagined. Jessica didn't sleep. She couldn't. Even hours later, she still tasted blood in the back of her throat, where the gag had rubbed her gums raw. The leather straps around her wrists and ankles had been loosened but not undone. She was restrained to the cold steel bed like a lab rat left alone under flickering fluorescent lights that buzzed like flies in a jar. Her entire body ached from the crash, the kidnapping, the struggling, but it was nothing compared to what her mind endured. Adam was alive. 4 years of imagining his grave, of blaming him, of hoping he'd been taken too. And he was here, standing, walking, talking, wearing a surgeon's gown, working for them. Jessica couldn't stop replaying the look in his eyes when he saw her. The guilt, the pain, the crack in his voice when he said her name. It wasn't fake. It couldn't be. But what kind of hell had he been living in? Why hadn't he escaped? And most terrifying, what if he wasn't a prisoner at all? What if he was one of them? The door creaked open. Jessica's body snapped rigid. Footsteps echoed on the concrete. One man entered, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing what looked like an orderly's uniform. He carried a metal tray. No words. He set it down on a rolling table. A bowl of oatmeal. A bottle of water. A syringe. "Time for your shot," he said, almost bored. Jessica's throat tightened. "What is that?" He didn't answer, just filled the syringe. Jessica shook her head. "No, don't, please." He reached toward her, gripping her arm. She thrashed hard. One wrist slipped slightly from its strap, and she twisted her shoulder, slamming her elbow into his ribs. He grunted, surprised, and dropped the syringe. Jessica kicked wildly, catching his thigh. The tray clattered. The man swore, reached for his radio. Jessica screamed at the top of her lungs, hoping someone, anyone, would hear. He lunged forward, grabbing her jaw. "Bitch, don't make me," but another voice interrupted him. "That's enough." A second figure stepped into the room, slimmer, older. Graying hair, sunken cheeks, eyes full of something brittle and exhausted. He wore civilian clothes, a long-sleeve shirt, and cargo pants, but his presence changed the temperature of the room. "I'll take it from here," he said. The orderly hesitated. "She's a fighter. I said I'll handle it." The man left. Jessica watched the newcomer warily. He crouched beside the bed and reached for the strap slowly, like approaching a wounded animal. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said. "Who are you?" "My name's Tom." He freed her left wrist, then the right. Jessica sat up slowly, her limbs stiff, eyes locked on his. "I saw you on the security monitor," Tom said. "In the hallway. You and Adam." Her breath hitched. "So you know him?" Tom nodded. "He saved my life. Twice." Jessica's eyes narrowed. "What is this place?" Tom looked around, jaw tightening. "Call it a clinic. An underground one. Black market. People disappear. Some get operated on. Others just die. They take whatever's worth money. Organs mostly. Sometimes more." Jessica wrapped her arms around her stomach, shivering despite the heat. "They've kept Adam alive because he's a real surgeon. The others are butchers. They needed someone with skill. Then why hasn't he escaped? Why hasn't he called for help?" Tom sat back on his heels. "They killed his wife." Jessica blinked. "I know. Emily was my sister." Tom's expression changed. "I didn't know that. He was with her when they disappeared. He told me," Tom said. "They took them both, made him watch, said if he didn't cooperate, they'd hurt her. She panicked, tried to run. One of them, Rico, shot her. Point blank. Adam tried to attack him. They beat him until he passed out." Jessica's heart broke all over again. They used that to control him. Said the only way he'd survive was to work. So he did. And every time he tried to rebel, they punished him, beat him, starved him, locked him in a cell. Why haven't you escaped?" Tom looked away. "I'm just a guy. Used to be an EMT. Got picked up off the street after I lost my job. Woke up here with stitches and a missing kidney. Adam saved me from a botched second surgery. I've been pretending to be a janitor biding time. Why help me? Because you're the first outsider who's ever made it in. And you're his family. That matters." Jessica wiped her face with her sleeve. "Can we get out?" Tom nodded slowly. "There's a motor pool out back. They use it to move bodies. Ambulances, sedans, even refrigerated trucks. I know the shift schedule. If we go now, we can slip out during the meal swap." "Then let's go," he held up a hand. "One problem. What they've been looking for something at your sister's house. A ledger. Adam said it lists everything, buyers, dates, amounts. That's the real gold. If they think you know where it is, they won't stop." Jessica went cold. "They already tried to break in when I was there. I found letters in her recipe book. Adam must have hidden them years ago. I didn't know about any ledger." Tom rose. "Then we move now, before they decide you're more trouble than you're worth." The halls were quieter now. Tom moved like a shadow, leading her through side corridors, avoiding the central hub. He handed Jessica a baseball cap, a long jacket, and sunglasses. "Walk like you belong," he said. She tried. Her knees shook with every step. They passed two men in scrubs. Tom gave them a nod. They nodded back. No one stopped them. The motor pool sat behind a rusted steel door. Tom keyed in a code and it buzzed open. Inside was a dusty garage filled with medical vans and unmarked cars. He pointed to a battered pickup. My ride. They climbed in. Jessica slid low in the seat as Tom started the engine. The security gate ahead loomed. A guard in a reflective vest stepped out of a small booth. Tom rolled the window down. "Just taking this one out for cleaning," he said casually. The guard checked a clipboard, then waved them through. Oh. Jessica didn't breathe until they hit the open highway. They drove in silence for 20 minutes before Tom pulled into a gas station. Jessica jumped out and ran to the payphone. She fumbled coins into the slot, hands trembling. 911. "What's your emergency?" "My name is Jessica Miller. I've been kidnapped. I'm at a gas station off Highway 604. There's an illegal medical operation running out of an old warehouse. They're harvesting organs. You have to send help." She gave the dispatcher everything location names, even Rico's fedora. Tom took the phone after. "My name is Tom Alvarez. I've seen the operation firsthand. I worked inside. We have to move fast." Jessica stepped away and stared at the stars. Somewhere behind them in that warehouse, Adam was still a prisoner. But now, someone knew, and help was coming. Jessica stood just outside the perimeter of chaos. Red and blue lights pulsed faintly in the distance, far enough not to draw attention, but close enough to cast ghostly hues on the dust. Tactical units were gathering behind the hills, crouched in clusters beside armored vans. Officers wore black tactical gear rifles cradled in their arms. Radios hissed quietly in the darkness, punctuated by terse voices and clipped commands. The warehouse sat like a sleeping beast in the middle of the desert. She'd seen it before from inside, strapped to a steel bed, her wrists chafed raw. Now she saw it from the outside, a massive concrete structure, one story, with boarded windows and rusted vents. But under the surface, it was alive with lights. Jessica could feel it. Somewhere inside Adam was waiting, still trapped, still working, and maybe running out of time. "Ma'am," said a voice beside her. A woman in tactical gear stepped forward, her short black hair tucked beneath a Kevlar helmet. Her name patch read, "Torres. I'm Captain Marie Torres. I'm leading the operation. Detective Reyes says you're the one who got us here." Jessica nodded, still absorbing it all. Tom stood next to her, arms crossed, face pale. "We believe there are at least a dozen victims inside," Torres continued, "possibly more in holding areas. We've identified 2 major suspects from your descriptions. Rico, real name, Ricardo Jimenez, and Max Dominguez. Known ties to organized organ trafficking out of Eastern Europe." Jessica's stomach turned. "What about Dominic?" she asked. Tom's head snapped toward her. Torres frowned. "Who Dominic Torino?" Jessica said. "He's the one behind all of it. He doesn't work the warehouse. He runs the books, the deals. He's the spider in the center of the web." Tom nodded grimly. "He only shows when something big is at stake. If he's here tonight, that means something's about to move." Torres tapped her radio. "I'll relay that to intelligence. We'll adjust priority targets." She turned to Jessica. "You've done enough. You're safe now. I need you to stay at the staging area. We've got medics and officers to debrief you." Jessica opened her mouth to protest, but then shut it. They were trained for this. She had to let them do their job. But every fiber of her being screamed to follow them through those doors. to find Adam, to bring him home. Inside the mobile command center, Jessica watched the assault unfold on a wall of monitors. Drones circled silently overhead, feeding live infrared footage to the screens. Black silhouettes moved through the structure heat signatures, indicating bodies in every room. Some clustered in what appeared to be dormitories. Others moved in surgery bays. And one room. Jessica leaned closer. "That one," she said, pointing. "That's where they took me." Reyes appeared at her side, his face shadowed with tension. "You okay?" he asked. She shook her head. "No, but I will be." He nodded, then looked at the feed. "We've confirmed your brother-in-law is inside. He's being prepped in one of the operating rooms." Jessica's breath caught. "For what? We don't know yet, but he's not restrained. That could work for us or against us." Jessica stared at the screen, her chest tight. "If you go in too late." "We won't," Reyes said. "We're moving in now." Captain Torres raised a gloved fist. Behind her, the first wave of officers moved forward like liquid shadow, advancing across the hard-packed desert with weapons drawn. They split into 4 teams. Alpha and Bravo would take the main entrance. Charlie would breach the eastern wall near the surgery corridor. Delta would secure the motor pool and cut off exits. Torres gave the signal. A low boom shattered the silence. Flashbang. Then a second. Screams erupted inside. Alpha team poured through the front, shouting commands. "Down on the ground!" "Show me your hands!" Chaos exploded. Jessica gripped the edge of the monitor table as the screens flared with motion. Rico ran through the hallway, brandishing a pistol. Max shoved a patient off a gurney and tried to use her as a shield. Other staff scattered like roaches. Then one figure caught her eye. Center screen, room 4. Adam. He wasn't running. He stood in the middle of the room, hands raised, expression dazed. 2 officers entered. He dropped to his knees. Jessica exhaled. He was surrendering. He was alive. But the relief lasted seconds. On the far right monitor, a new alert lit up backdoor breach. A heat signature bolted from the administrative wing toward the motor pool. Torres cursed. "We've got a runner." Jessica froze. "That's him," she whispered. "That's Dominic." On screen, he was nothing more than a shape, a heat blob moving fast. But she knew. The posture, the direction, the escape route Tom had warned them about. "He's heading to a vehicle," Tom said. "He'll have backup. He always does." Torres turned to Reyes. "Cut him off." Reyes bolted from the trailer, shouting into his radio. Jessica didn't wait. She ran after him. Jessica Torres shouted, but it was too late. The night air was electric with movement. Sirens wailed. Lights strobed. Jessica raced across the hard ground lungs, burning feet, barely touching earth. Ahead, floodlights caught the glint of a black SUV peeling away from the far gate. Reyes aimed and fired. A tire exploded. The vehicle, fish-tailed, swerved and slammed into a concrete barrier. The driver's door burst open. A man in a tailored suit rolled out, coughing bloody. He staggered to his feet. Dominic! He pulled a gun from his jacket and began firing wildly. Officers ducked. Bullets ricocheted off metal and gravel. Jessica dropped behind a parked truck, heart pounding. Then, from the corner of her eye, she saw movement. Adam. He was running straight toward Dominic. "Adam!" she screamed. He didn't stop. He tackled Dominic mid-stride, and they both hit the ground hard. The gun skidded away. Fists flew. Dominic got one arm free and punched Adam in the ribs. Adam kneed him back, snarling. "You killed her," he shouted. "You killed Emily." Dominic laughed even as blood poured from his mouth. "She screamed your name, Doc. You remember that." She begged. "I told her you weren't coming." Adam roared and raised his fist. A dozen red laser dots lit up Dominic's chest. "Stand down." Officers shouted. "Put your hands up." Adam trembled. For a moment Jessica thought he would pull the trigger anyway, but then slowly he lowered his arm. "I'm done killing," he said hoarsely. "That's your legacy, not mine." Dominic spit blood and sneered. But it didn't matter. Officers swarmed in, tackled him, cuffed him. Adam dropped to his knees. Jessica ran to him. He looked up at her eyes hollow. "You came back," he whispered. She knelt and held him close. "I promised Emily I would." He broke then, shoulders shaking, and Jessica held him as the lights of the police vans flickered across the broken desert. Hours later, inside a clean hospital room at Desert Springs, Adam sat beside her with an IV in his arm and bandages across his knuckles. Jessica handed him a bottle of water. "Drink," she said. "Doctor's orders." He laughed once, soft, painful. "I never thought I'd see daylight again." She studied him. "You want to tell me everything?" He nodded. Then he did. From the debt, the failed poker game, the threats, the way they found them on the trail. The moment Emily screamed and Dominic raised the gun. The silence that followed. "I thought I died with her," Adam whispered. "But they didn't kill me. They needed my hands, so I became their prisoner." Jessica took his hand in hers. "You're not anymore." He looked at her. "No. Now I have to live with what I did and then live in a way she'd be proud of." Adam's eyes filled again. "I want to help bring them all down. Every buyer, every contact. I have the ledger. I know where it is." Jessica smiled weary but fierce. "Then let's finish what they started." The hospital room was quiet except for the rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor and the soft hum of fluorescent lights overhead. Jessica sat in the corner, her arms wrapped around her knees, watching Adam as he slept for the first time in what had to be days, maybe longer. The bruises across his ribs had deepened to an ugly purple. The IV pumped fluid steadily into his arm. His face, though bruised and hollowed from malnutrition and trauma, was finally at peace. She hadn't stopped watching him. Not since he collapsed into her arms in the dirt outside that warehouse. Not since he whispered Emily's name through cracked lips. He was safe now. But the nightmare wasn't over. Not yet. Detective Reyes arrived shortly after sunrise. His face was grim, lined with exhaustion, but his eyes held something else, determination. "We've cataloged over 30 victims from the facility," he said, standing at the foot of Adam's bed. 12 of them are alive. Barely. The rest, partial remains, surgical waste, bone fragments. Jessica's stomach twisted. "And the suspects, 23 arrested, 6 critical, 4 dead from the firefight. Rico and Max are in custody. Dominic's being held under federal authority, no bail, no privileges." Homeland Security stepped in the moment they saw his name. Apparently, he's tied to at least 3 international trafficking rings. Jessica exhaled slowly. "Good." Reyes looked at Adam, who stirred but didn't wake. "He's a victim," Reyes said gently. "But if he has information, real information, we need it now, before lawyers get involved." Jessica stood. He has it. He told me last night. There's a ledger. Reyes raised an eyebrow, where Adam's voice was hoarse when he answered from the bed. In the piano. Jessica turned startled. Adam blinked slowly, pain visible in every movement. It's at our house, he said. The old upright piano. I hollowed out the soundboard. It's behind the tuning plate. Reyes pulled out a notebook. What exactly is in this ledger? Adam swallowed hard. Names, accounts, crypto wallets, organ requests, price tags, from corneas to kidneys to full livers, even pediatric clients. He closed his eyes. It's all there. Every operation, every person Dominic ever sold to or operated on. Jessica stepped closer, her voice quiet. Why didn't you destroy it? Because part of me always hoped I'd get out, he whispered. And if I didn't, maybe someone else would. Maybe it would matter. Reyes nodded. We'll send a retrieval unit now. If it's as detailed as you say, this could bring the entire network down. 3 hours later, Reyes returned with a briefcase handcuffed to his wrist. Inside, neatly organized and shockingly detailed, were hundreds of printed pages, some typed, some handwritten. Medical files, order lists, a USB drive, Bitcoin addresses, codes, routing instructions for offshore accounts, invoices, even digital scans of passports used by clients. Jessica stared at it in horror. Each page was another life stolen. Each line item was a person bought and butchered. Reyes took it all without comment and called in the FBI. Within the hour, a black Suburban arrived outside the hospital. The FBI agent who entered Adam's room looked like he belonged in a courtroom drama. Tall, severe, dressed in a crisp gray suit. His badge read, Agent Marcus Shaw. Dr. Carter, he said, offering a cool but polite nod. I've read through what you provided. It's extensive. It's everything Adam said. I kept records to stay sane. I had to believe it would mean something someday. Shaw didn't smile. It will. We've already confirmed links to trafficking operations in Colombia, Turkey, and Romania. Some of the buyers are American, wealthy, powerful, untouchable, until now. Adam's jaw clenched. They shouldn't be untouchable. They won't be. But we'll need your full cooperation. You'd testify. Adam looked at Jessica, then nodded. Yes. Good. Shaw's voice lowered slightly, but you need to understand cooperating makes you a target. Dominic's people will retaliate. You can't go back to your old life. Jessica stepped forward. What does that mean? New identity, witness protection, possibly relocation. Adam didn't flinch. I've already lost everything else. If this ledger brings them down, I'll burn the rest of my past with it. Jessica's voice was steady. I'm coming with him. Shaw hesitated. I'm not asking for permission, she added. Shaw studied her, then nodded. I'll file the recommendation. That night, Jessica returned to the house one last time. The door still hung slightly off-center from when she had fled. The recipe book was still on the table. She packed it along with a few photos of Emily, a stuffed elephant from the nursery, and one of Adam's old jackets. Then she sat at the piano. For a long time she didn't touch the keys. She just listened. To the house. To the quiet. To the ghosts. Then softly she pressed a key. It rang out hollow and flat. She smiled faintly. The soundboard really had been hollowed. And for the first time since Emily disappeared, Jessica laughed just once at the absurdity of it all. Adam Carter, the man they thought had vanished, had been playing Beethoven over a ledger full of blood money. And now, finally, the music was over. In the days that followed, headlines exploded across the country. Organ trafficking ring exposed in Nevada desert raid. Doctor held captive for 4 years, speaks out FBI. Confirms multi-nation operation with ties to U.S. medical institutions. Photos of the warehouse, of Dominic being escorted in cuffs, of masked SWAT teams carrying out victims wrapped in thermal blankets. But not a single photo of Adam or Jessica. Their names were scrubbed from the public record. By the time the media frenzy hit its peak, they were already gone. New names, new IDs, new lives waiting on the other side of anonymity. And yet, as they sat in a safe house in rural Montana watching the news flash across a muted TV, Jessica turned to Adam and asked quietly, "Do you think Emily would have forgiven you?" Adam didn't answer immediately. Then he looked at her, voice shaking. She already did. Jessica nodded, eyes damp. Then let's make her proud. They gave him a new name. Ethan Marshall. Age 39. Profession consultant, marital status. Single. No children. Last residence. Flagstaff, Arizona. Jessica became Evelyn Moore. Sister. Support contact. Former pastry chef. Moved to Montana after a traumatic family loss. The IDs were flawless, the paperwork impenetrable. Witness protection had scrubbed them clean. But no amount of government erasure could delete what they remembered. Every scar on Adam's arms told a story. Every nightmare Jessica woke from sweating, reaching out to a sister who wasn't there, reminded her that no new name could silence the old grief. They lived quietly, but not peacefully. The trial was coming. Dominic Torino had pled not guilty to 32 federal charges, including conspiracy to commit human trafficking, involuntary manslaughter, racketeering, and medical fraud. Even behind bars, he moved money. Threats had already surfaced. Witnesses intimidated a federal agent nearly run off the road outside D.C., and one paralegal found unconscious in her car after being poisoned. The message was clear. Dominic might be in a cell, but the network lived on. The call came in on a Monday morning. "We need Adam back," said Agent Shaw. "The trial begins in 10 days. He'll be our key witness." Jessica didn't hesitate. "We'll come." Adam said nothing for a long time, then nodded. "I'm ready." But he wasn't. Not really. How could he be? The federal courthouse in downtown Las Vegas looked like any other government building, a cold block of glass and steel, but it felt like a mausoleum. Inside it buzzed with reporters, security teams, legal aides, and nervous family members of the victims. Jessica walked beside Adam, her fingers curled lightly around his. His face was calm, but she could feel the tension in every part of him. He hadn't slept much the night before. Reyes met them outside the courtroom. "Glad you're here," he said. "You've seen the lineup." Adam nodded. "The defense team looks like a Wall Street investment firm." Jessica's jaw tightened. Dominic had hired one of the top legal teams in the country. Former DOJ prosecutors, Ivy League stars, private investigators on retainer. The man had murdered dozens, crippled hundreds, but now he wore a tailored suit and smiled like a man on vacation. I'll testify to everything Adam said quietly. Just keep her safe. Reyes looked at Jessica. She'll be in protected seating, and after this, you both disappear for good. Jessica glanced at the courtroom doors. We'll see. Adam took the stand on day 3. The room was packed. The jury watched him with unreadable expressions, part sympathy, part caution. His story had been in every headline for months, and still many people couldn't decide what he was hero prisoner or accomplice. He sat tall in the witness box, hands folded. Then he began. I'm Dr. Adam Carter. I was taken against my will on October 14th, 2019. My wife was murdered. I was forced to work under threat of violence and death for the next 4 years inside an illegal medical operation. He told them everything, the threats, the surgeries, the drugs they gave patients to keep them compliant, the catalog system used to match organs with buyers, the way Dominic had visited once a month, smiling, calculating, keeping everyone afraid without ever raising his voice. Then he produced the ledger. This is a copy, Adam said. The original was given to the FBI. It details 4 years of sales, names account numbers, dates patient data. It also contains voice memos, Dominic's own directives. The prosecution played one. Dominic's voice filled the courtroom. Kidneys are going stale. Move the shipment by Friday. If she dies on the table, toss her in the desert and bleach the room. I don't care who she is, just make sure the buyer gets what he paid for. Gasps filled the courtroom. Jessica closed her eyes. That voice, that smug, brutal calm. She could feel Emily beside her in that moment, watching, listening, bearing witness. But Dominic's lawyers weren't finished. On cross-examination, they attacked Adam relentlessly. You assisted in over 60 operations, Dr. Carter. I was forced, but you performed them. You handled the instruments. You made incisions. That was your hand, was it not? I was a prisoner, and yet you made detailed notes. Why so thorough? Adam didn't flinch. So that someday someone could prove what happened. The defense smirked. Or to cover your own liability. Jessica felt the rage rise in her chest. She wanted to scream, but Adam held firm. He never raised his voice, never lost composure. When they tried to suggest he had joined willingly, he countered with bruises. When they implied he had once gambled away hospital funds, he admitted it. Yes, he said, I had a gambling problem. I made mistakes. But nothing I did justifies what they did to my wife, or to the children they butchered. That silence in the courtroom was louder than any explosion. By day 7, the prosecution had presented its final witness, a young boy, 13, rescued from the warehouse, now in protective care. He had been kept for bone marrow harvesting. He told the court, the doctor, he gave me water when the others wouldn't. He fixed my arm when it got infected. He told me not to be afraid. That boy's words, so simple and small, carried the weight of redemption. The verdict came on day 12. Guilty. On all counts. Dominic didn't flinch. He simply smiled. Jessica watched him closely. It was a smile of someone who had prepared for this outcome and had a backup plan. 3 days later, just before Adam and Jessica were scheduled to be relocated again, an explosion shook the federal vehicle transfer lot behind the courthouse. 2 federal agents died instantly. Another was hospitalized. The target had been clear. The blast had been aimed at the transport vehicle assigned to move Adam and Jessica. They weren't inside a delay in testimony processing had postponed their relocation by 30 minutes. It saved their lives, but not their fear. "We can't protect you forever," Agent Shaw told them. "Dominic's network is wounded but not dead." Jessica looked at Adam, and Adam at last spoke the words they'd both been thinking. "Then maybe it's time we stop running. They should have disappeared. That was the deal." After the trial, after Dominic Torino was sentenced to 7 consecutive life sentences without parole, Adam and Jessica were supposed to vanish. New names, new faces, a fresh start in some quiet town with quiet people and quiet mornings. But they didn't. Instead, they waited, watched, tracked. It started with the ledger what it didn't contain. One name was missing. It took Jessica weeks to see it. Adam had included every buyer, every seller, every shell company, and crypto wallet Dominic used to fund the operations. But he had never found the name of the person who gave Dominic cover in the U.S. medical system. Because someone had to. Organ surgeries required equipment supplies, post-op drugs. And someone on the inside had to be helping them stay invisible. Jessica found it in a single overlooked bank transfer. A medical supplier in Phoenix listed a recurring transaction with a nonprofit called Unity Health Outreach. It sounded legitimate, but it wasn't. Unity Health was a front, and the man behind it, Dr. Leland Croft, former chief administrator at a Las Vegas private hospital, now living comfortably in Sonoma, California, semi-retired, big donor to several health policy PACs. And the man who had signed off on the disposal of expired tissue over 100 times from remote clinic partners. Jessica brought the name to Agent Shaw. Shaw hesitated. "That's not our jurisdiction anymore," he said. "That's for the DOJ's Organized Crime Division. They'll process it." But Jessica saw it in his eyes. No one was coming. The government had what they needed. Dominic was in prison. But the roots remained. And if no one else would pull them up, she would. Adam was hesitant at first. He wanted peace. For the first time in 5 years, he had his own name back, even if it only existed in private. He could walk outside without looking over his shoulder. He could breathe. But when Jessica showed him the files, when she traced Croft's signature to shipments of anesthesia and post-op antibiotics found in the Nevada warehouse, his eyes changed. "They're still out there," he whispered. She nodded. "They're still profiting off what we survived. They rented a cabin near Napa Valley under aliases." Jessica used the baking skills she had long abandoned and took a part-time job at a local cafe selling lavender honey cake, the one Emily loved most. Adam got hired at a free clinic under a pseudonym, volunteering 4 days a week. He told himself it was therapy, service, atonement. But at night they built their case. They worked through every bank record, every invoice, every off-book pharmaceutical order. They traced Croft's connections to organ brokers in Southeast Asia and a surgical technician in L.A. who had quietly gone missing 2 years ago. When they had enough, Jessica called Shaw again. He was silent for a long time on the line. "You're really doing this?" he asked. "Yes," Jessica said, "because it's not finished." Shaw sighed. "I can't protect you this time. They won't sanction a second witness identity program. I don't need protection," she said. "I need exposure." Jessica leaked the files to a journalist. Her name was Layla Ben Amin, an award-winning investigative reporter with a reputation for destroying pharmaceutical fraudsters and a deep hatred for medical exploitation. Layla didn't hesitate. She published it all. The doctor who fed the trade, how U.S. medical elites protected a global organ empire. The article dropped like a bomb. Within 48 hours, Dr. Croft was served with a federal subpoena. Within 72, his house was raided. Within 5 days, 2 of his offshore accounts were frozen, and an emergency hearing was called before a Senate subcommittee. Jessica and Adam didn't wait to be called. They walked into that hearing room uninvited and offered testimony. They stood together hand in hand and told a row of suited men exactly how easy it had been for someone like Dominic to buy protection inside the medical system. "You want to know how it happened," Adam said. "Because people like Croft wore white coats. Because no one wanted to believe a doctor would sell lives. Because money covers everything in this country, even blood." The room was dead silent. Jessica looked at the panel. People are still missing, still taken. Somewhere in the world tonight, a child is being operated on without consent, so a billionaire in Berlin or Bangkok can live another 5 years. And you have the power to stop it. She let her voice rise. So stop it. They were escorted out of the building afterward. Layla caught up with them on the steps. "You just went from survivors to targets," she warned. "We were always targets," Adam said. "Now we're just louder." She smiled. "I hope you're ready for what comes next." Jessica smiled too. "We are." Months passed. Croft was indicted. More arrests followed in Brazil, in France, in Dubai. The network began to collapse under its own weight. Adam and Jessica changed their names again. This time, not because the government told them to, because they wanted to leave behind the ashes of what had been and build something new. They moved to Oregon, opened a clinic. Jessica turned a dusty back room into a bakery, just 2 ovens, a few trays, and the smell of vanilla and lavender. She called it Emily's Crumbs. Every Friday she left a cake on the clinic porch with a note. For the ones who never got to come home, for the ones we still remember, for the ones we're still waiting for. One morning, months later, Adam found an envelope outside the door. No return address. Inside was a photo. A woman in a headscarf holding a little girl. On the back, a handwritten note. She was saved because you didn't give up. Thank you. Adam stared at it for a long time. Then he showed it to Jessica. She took it silently, tears welling in her eyes. They didn't know the sender. They didn't need to. Somewhere out there, life had begun again, and so had they. Epilogue. In the vast silence of the Nevada desert, the warehouse still stood gutted, now scorched from the inside windows, shattered. It had become a ruin, a warning, a grave. But in a quiet corner under a pile of rocks, someone had left a bouquet. Dried lavender and sage bound with a ribbon, and next to it a note. We remember the ones who were lost. We honor the ones who survived, and we promise never again.